I'm sorry, are you addressing me? Because your authority is not recognized in Fort Kickass.
Are not rubbers. Oh my God. Okay, yes, you can rub them, but just please don't hurt my family.
Men, we're not robbers.
Oh.
Hi, this is Harry from inFive.
This is Brian from One Man Standing.
This is Nick from Shit to the Sun.
This is Jess from Shoot Lab.
You're listening to Dr. Bones.
Dr. Bones and Mike, Dr. Bones and Mike.
And you're listening to New Music Saturday.
This is Martin from Dylan Rock.
JJ from Juxta.
Hey, this is Leslie
And Jason.
of The Sweetest Condition. New Music Saturday.
Music Saturday.
New Music Saturday.
New Music Saturday.
And you're listening to New Music Saturday.
New Music Saturday. Dr. Bones and Mike. New Music Saturday.
Right on, and welcome to Music Saturday, the first one of 2018. We took about a month off there because there was a lot of stuff going on. I had to move. Mike had a bunch of stuff going on as well. So we are back and ready to rock and roll. So now, obviously, joining me, like always, is the guitarist everybody wish they were, Mike, One inFive.
Hello. I forgot about that intro. I still like it, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure about it.
So,
But hello, happy 2018.
yeah, right. So let's hope for some more great music and some more decent shows. And just to kick the new year off right, our special guest tonight, tonight, singular, is Stefan from Who Killed Nancy Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first off, Stefan, and I'm sure this is a question everybody has, is just like the name Who Killed Nancy Johnson. It's so clever, but like, how did you guys come up with that? Were you guys like, it almost sounds like a murder mystery sort of thing, right?
Yeah, well, we kind of like the mystery side of it, but yeah, I'll let you in. What it was when I joined the band was actually called Nancy Johnson. And Nancy Johnson was named after, there was a photography exhibition, and there was a picture of a woman's dressing table with all these prescription medications on it. They were all made out to someone called Nancy Johnson. And our old bass player actually saw this and liked it and thought it'd be a good name for a band. So he had a band called Nancy Johnson, which had lost its singer for about a year. And I kept seeing these ads sort of locally looking for a new singer. And in the end, I decided to go along and try out with them. I joined the band, but the sound began to change really quickly, and it became much less poppy and a little bit more aggressive. And so we kind of wanted a name that would reflect that, change in music. But we liked keeping the link to Nancy Johnson, so we came up with Who Killed Nancy Johnson. And then the idea of it is that the answer to the question Who Killed Nancy Johnson is Who Killed Nancy Johnson killed Nancy Johnson, because that band doesn't exist anymore. So there you go.
Just add a little confusion in there as well. Like, who killed what now? But no, that's a interesting story, because, like I said, it's one of my main questions normally, just because I'm curious. I mean, they're not always like super exciting stories, but they always have a cool kind of relevance to them. And this one, I was really wondering about, and I was kind of thinking about it for a long time.
To be honest, it's one of the reasons I think it's a good name is because it does make people stop and think, who's Nancy Johnson? What's that about? So they start asking questions. So that makes it more kind of sticky, I guess. It sticks in your head a bit more.
And is this just a clever cover-up,
It's a clever cover-up.
Yeah.
No. There is no Nancy Johnson. There are no bodies buried, honestly. The only Nancy Johnson who died was the old band. When we changed direction, yeah.
Well, that's all I got. No, seriously. So just in general, like, I mean, I'm glad you talked a little bit about the sound. Now, as far as the recording process, like, or songwriting process, does each individual bring something to the table? Do you guys kind of sit and jam together and figure out later? I mean, how's that work for you?
It's changed. Again, with the previous band, it was mostly written by one person who would kind of do demos and bring them in, and everyone would just learn their parts. But the band as it is now, we've become much more collaborative. and we tend to write. I mean, all the stuff on the new. I think with one exception, all the stuff on the new EP was written actually in a rehearsal room. So basically, the guitarist would come up with a riff, we'd play around with it, we'd leave it, we'd come back to it the next week, and over a period of weeks, we'd kind of build up an idea of where the verse and chorus were going to go. Then I'd usually go away and do some words, and then throw them away and do some more words, and then throw them away, and finally find some words I liked, and then we'd hit on a title. And so the thing sort of came together like that as a kind of collaborative thing. So I think the newer material, I mean, Dark Horse is a good example. I think the newer material is a bit more complex, and that reflects the fact that it's got, 4 people inputting into it rather than one person.
Right. No, fair enough, and it makes sense. That's the other thing is because each band dynamic is different as far as how they create songs and bring stuff to the table. So it's always it's always interesting to see like how it's done, because I mean I've heard lots of different stories over the past 5 or 6 years, and one really got me. I think it was probably one of the best I've ever heard. A guy wrote a song based on a dream he had. I guess pretty much wrote the song for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, right on. Mike, go ahead.
Hello.
Oh yeah.
Well, hello. It's nice to talk to you. I've had the pleasure of meeting you and seeing your other band. Actually.
I've had the pleasure of meeting you as well, Mike.
Yeah, it was wonderful. We might ask you a little bit about the Bronsons later, just as soon as you're in them as well, and you're on the show. But first of all, your last EP was one of my favourite releases of last year, unquestionably. Just the more we played it, the more I was telling everyone I loved it, and I think you said you listened a few times, so I'm sure you've heard me.
I have. I listened to the show a few times, and I'm really grateful for the support as well. I've got to say that. I mean, you've been great for the band, yeah.
Well, we play.
I still quote you.
Like. Good. So we're lucky enough to be able to play the stuff we like. So first of all, that was excellent. Your new EP. Am I allowed to say the name? Is that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's the new EP. I think it's called Flat Earth Theory. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So a couple of questions about that, I suppose. Obviously, we're going to play a track from it in a minute as well. But my first question about that is, it's a brilliant name, and there's this whole thing going around at the moment, which both amuses and scares me, that people are actually seriously going back to believing that the Earth is flat. But what was the motivation behind calling the EP that?
Okay, well, it was. We were knocking names around, and one of the obvious thing to do is to do what we did with Cops and Robbers and call the EP the name of one of the songs. But I kind of like the idea of having a different name. And a lot of the songs are about. They've ended up being about the difference between what you are inside and how you are outside. So maybe it's what beliefs drive you, or ideas taking you over, or this. Every song's got a different topic, but they all seem to sort of cluster around that. And the thing was, our guitarist Pete has been kind of trolling these flat Earth theory Facebook groups, where people put all this stuff up for a while, and it had become like a little topic of conversation among the band. That he was kind of coming out with this stuff, and he was presenting their arguments. I mean, just to challenge us to demolish them, really. So we found ourselves sort of in breaks of a recording talking about flat Earth and why it couldn't be true, and he was coming up with all their arguments of why it must be true and all this kind of stuff. And we just hit on the idea of Flat Earth Theory would be the perfect title for the song, because we were talking about flat Earth theories during the recording, and all the songs are about belief and how belief can kind of screw you up. So yeah, it seemed like a good fit.
Nice. What's the best argument you've heard for the Earth being flat?
I honestly haven't heard a good argument. Really.
It's not because it must be.
It's just. I mean, I love the stuff about you go up in a plane and you look at the horizon and it's a line. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. What do you do? I mean, the lovely thing I think about some of these really crazy conspiracy theories is I just can't figure out why would anyone bother to lie about the Earth not being flat if it was flat. What is Rupert Murdoch? What does the Queen gain? What does Donald Trump make from the fact that where's the motivation for these lies? I can't see it. So I mean, if the Earth was flat, surely fair enough. Let's start digging.
Yeah. It is a bit. it's a bit mad. I mean, you know, I think people should be able to believe whatever they want to believe, of course.
Oh yeah.
It's totally up to them, but equally, I kind of there's loads of stuff out there, and I think it says a lot about the world in that, you know.
I think there are limits to belief. I think when just basic evidence says that something is completely and obviously wrong, I think that it's right to challenge beliefs like that. I mean, beliefs about where you go after you die, no one can prove anything. So believe what you like, but the Earth being flat.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think it's an interesting sort of commentary on global society almost, because it makes you feel like people cannot possibly believe that things could be as bad as perhaps they are, so they have to find things to justify.
Well, they say we're living in a post-fact society, don't they? And you do wonder if it's true. Yeah.
This is it. It's all the map. But anyway, that's not so music related. So
I was gonna say.
Sorry. That's for a different.
Shall we call Piers Morgan or what? Yeah.
Sorry.
If you get him in, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Right.
I was joking.
I know. Well, my other question about the EP was in terms of the sound. So, like I said, we're going to play obviously the track bit anyway. But how would you describe? So, for people that, let's say, for people that haven't heard anything, so someone who's never listened to this show because we played it loads, but someone who's never heard Nancy Johnson, how would you describe, or Who Killed Nancy Johnson? How would you describe kind of your sound as it was, and then how that's evolved, because it's quite different than the new song, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
they are different. I think the older stuff was a bit poppier, but I mean, I don't know. It's quite. I mean, we call it post punk. That's the best description we can come up with. We call it post punk because it's got that kind of aggression that punk brought to the table, but it's not as simple as punk. It's not, because I mean a lot of, mind you, I mean I'm old enough to remember when punk started, and a lot of it wasn't that simple. A lot of it was quite complex stuff. It was just played very aggressively, and it was more interesting because of that. And it had loads of energy, and I think that's one thing we try and get across is energy. We really want it to sound full of life, you know, like it's really thrusting forward. I think the older stuff, it's probably a little bit simpler in its structure. It tends to go kind of, you know, verse, chorus, break, blah, blah, you know, so it's a kind of fairly set structure. The newer stuff, we tend to play with that a bit more, so we introduce sort of third elements and we twist it around a bit. I mean, someone who heard it recently compared it to Killing Joke, the new stuff, and I think I can kind of see that, although we don't have keyboards or strange facial hair, I can see the comparison, because there's a similar kind of complexity going on there, but you've still got that huge energy and sort of, you know, aggression in it. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about growing strange facial hair?
No, I can't do it. You know, all I can come up with is a slightly mottled, you know, ugly-looking stubble, which looks fine for about 10 minutes.
Fair enough. That wasn't related to music either. I was just.
No, it wasn't, was it? You said nothing personal.
Well,
yeah, no, I'm sorry. I do have a tendency to tangent. I don't know if anyone's noticed that.
Man, you know what? Just on that topic alone, reminded me of an interview I did with a band called Mr. Susan, and I told them. And this is
see, straight away, I want to know the story of that name.
So, well, it's from a character from a show. It's kind of like a Mrs. Brown's Boys sort of TV show.
Oh, okay.
And the butler was named Mr. Susan.
Oh, fine.
So, but we were talking about their new album, and I said, you know what, you guys are University to Amaze Me. You're really tight as a band, because I've interviewed them a few times, and they are. Said and one guy goes, I don't know about that. He goes, but we all have beards. and I started dying laughing, because these guys were jokesters as well, right? So it was always a lot of fun, and that was like the best response ever. Oh, well, we all have beards, I guess, you know. So that's something. Like, that's how tight we are. So without further ado, we're gonna get to the brand new Who Killed Nancy Johnson single. This one's called Dark Horse. Dig this.